All eyes in the lavishly decorated ballroom of Valderrama Enterprises turned in unison as the grand double doors creaked open. A woman entered. Her head was bowed, her hands trembled. She wore a plain white uniform, a maid's outfit, apron still on, feet clad in worn flip-flops. No one could believe it. This wasn't just any staff. This was the wife of Madame Elvira Valderrama's son. Is that really Miguel's wife?" whispered a woman seated at a nearby table, quickly covering her mouth. "Are you seeing what she's wearing?" gasped another. In the middle of the crowd stood Miguel, arms folded, his forced smile frozen on his face. Meanwhile, Madame Elvira, dressed in a striking crimson gown, strutted confidently toward the girl, her red heels clicking against the ballroom floor. "Well, I'm glad you made it, dear," she said coolly. "You said you wanted to help, right? You said you weren't ashamed of where you came from. So here," she motioned with her hand, her voice like cold steel. "Welcome to your new role." The girl, Samantha, though everyone still called her Sam, couldn't speak. The stares of the wealthy guests pierced her like needles. Her soul felt naked. All she wanted in that moment was for the floor to open and swallow her whole. Suddenly, someone stepped forward from the side of the crowd. A tall man in a black suit, serious expression carved on his face. "What are you doing here?" Elvira asked, surprised. The man didn't respond to her. His eyes remained on Sam as he walked straight toward her. "Sam," he whispered, his voice filled with worry. Sam's knees buckled. She turned to him with a trembling smile, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to be with Miguel, even just once at a formal event." And in the next second, she collapsed. Her knees slammed onto the ballroom's marble floor. The tray in her hands clattered, water splashing everywhere. Some guests laughed, others pulled out their phones to record, but Dr. Elias Rowan, the man in the black suit, was the only one who moved toward her. He crouched down, took off his coat, and draped it gently over her shoulders. And for the very first time since she entered that mansion, someone stood up for her. The beginning of something. The sun blazed above, but the heat in Sam's chest was even more intense. She sat beside Miguel inside a sleek black car on their way to the Valderrama estate. Their wedding had just concluded, an intimate civil ceremony at City Hall. No white gown, no music, no flowers, yet her heart was full, because simple as it was, she had married the man she loved. Miguel, however, remained quiet beside her, eyes glued to his phone. He scrolled through messages without looking her way. Sam wanted to ask him something, whether it was okay to go to his family's mansion right after the wedding, but she didn't know how to say it. She took a deep breath. "Love," she whispered, "are you sure it's okay for us to go to your place now? What if your family isn't ready?" Miguel didn't look at her. "You don't need to be nervous," he cut in. "They're the ones who should adjust. You're my wife now." Sam smiled. She believed him. She believed that being his wife was enough for his family to accept her. But the moment they passed through the towering gates of the Valderrama mansion, she felt it deep in her gut. She didn't belong. The house loomed like a castle, its ivory walls trimmed in gold, a fountain gurgling out front. Gardeners trimmed shrubs with precision. Uniformed house staff buzzed about like clockwork. Sam swallowed hard. Back in her small rural hometown, their home was made of wood, roof full of holes, doors that creaked with every gust of wind. Here, even the doorknobs looked more expensive than her entire village. When she stepped out of the car, Miguel gently held her by the waist. It felt performative, like he wanted to say, "Yes, this is who I chose." Inside, several staff greeted them with subtle nods. The living room was as silent as a chapel, and then she appeared. A woman descended the grand staircase, graceful as a queen, Elvira Valderrama. The mother Miguel always described as strong-willed, sharp, and unyielding when it came to principle. She wore a silk blouse and pearls, her every step echoing power. "Mom," Miguel said with a smile, "I'd like you to meet Samantha, but just call her Sam. She's my wife." Elvira did not respond immediately. Her eyes scanned Sam from head to toe, soaking her in like a critic evaluating an unworthy painting. "Your wife," she said flatly. Her lips curled into a tight smile, but her eyes cut like daggers. "You didn't even give us a chance to meet her before forcing us to accept your decision." Sam stepped forward. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she said softly, offering her hand. Elvira didn't take it. "I'm not used to people touching me without my permission." "Ma," Miguel started, but Elvira silenced him with a glance. "I don't plan on starting a fight," Elvira added, "but I won't pretend either. I didn't want you to be part of this family, Sam. Not because you did anything to me, but because you bring nothing to our name. No education, no connections, no pedigree." Sam felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Every word burned. Miguel said nothing. No one said anything. Elvira continued, "Before you forced yourself into my son's life, did it ever cross your mind that love isn't enough to sustain a family, especially in a world like ours? This isn't a fairy tale, Sam." Sam bit her lip, fighting back tears. "I love Miguel," she said quietly, "and I'm sure of that." Elvira smirked. "But can you live in his world? Because if not, you'll die never being accepted." "Enough, Mom," Miguel finally said, his tone steely. "She's my wife. It's legal. You can't take that back." "You rushed into this," Elvira snapped. "Don't expect me to respect it. You didn't even consult us." A maid appeared, announcing that dinner was ready. But at the long dinner table, Sam felt more out of place than ever. 10 seats, and she was the only one who didn't seem to belong. She fumbled with her silverware, used the wrong fork, chewed too slow or too fast. Miguel's sister, Andrea, scoffed openly. "Miguel," she said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "maybe next time teach her the difference between a salad fork and a dessert spoon before you bring her here." People chuckled. "She's so clueless," someone whispered. "Not everyone is born knowing dinner etiquette," Miguel said sharply. "If you don't want to eat, then leave. Sam and I will finish in peace." But even in defending her, his tone was cold. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't look at her. After the last bite, he stood and left, without a word. In the guest room they were assigned to, the silence remained cold. The newlyweds didn't speak. Sam quietly unpacked her clothes into the closet. Miguel sat at the edge of the bed, staring into space. "Miguel," Sam's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you sure about this?" Miguel turned away from her. "I'm just tired, Sam. Maybe they're just tired too. Don't think too much about it." And in that moment, Sam felt it. The chill of their marriage. Yes, they were married. But that night, it didn't feel like she was a wife. She felt like a guest in the life of the man she loved. The next morning, Sam heard footsteps downstairs. She followed the sound and saw Elvira in the living room, busy sorting through documents while on the phone. "Yes, go ahead with the plan," Elvira said sharply. "I want that girl to feel just how hard it is to survive in a world she doesn't belong to." Sam froze on the staircase. Her palms turned cold. It was only her first day as a Valderrama. And already, she knew, this was a battle she didn't choose, but one she'd have to fight. From the top of the stairs, she quietly listened to Elvira's voice, calm and unwavering. "I want to push her to the limit," Elvira said. "If she leaves on her own, I won't have to get my hands dirty. You take care of the details." Sam's heart thundered. She didn't understand the whole plan, but she knew one thing for sure. She was the target. As she descended the stairs, Andrea, Miguel's sister, met her with a smirk. Andrea was lounging in a velvet armchair, dressed in a peach satin robe, sipping coffee like royalty. "Oh, look who's awake, my brother's lovely wife," Andrea greeted sarcastically. "How was your first night in the mansion? Did you get used to the mattress without a mosquito net?" Sam bit her lip and forced a smile. "It was fine, thank you." "Don't pretend," Elvira chimed in from the dining room. "I don't believe you're happy here." Sam said nothing. She walked quietly to the kitchen and helped the staff prepare breakfast. Even without being told, she moved instinctively. She wasn't used to being idle. She didn't want to be seen as a burden. As she sliced fruit, she overheard two maids whispering nearby. "What's she doing here?" one asked, just loud enough for Sam to hear. "Maybe she's trying to prove she knows housework so she won't look so out of place." Sam said nothing. She finished her task and stepped outside, but every step she took felt like she was carrying the house's silent judgment on her back. That evening, when Miguel returned from work, Sam met him at their room's door. "Love, would you like some coffee?" she asked with a forced smile. "I'm tired," Miguel said curtly. "I have a report to finish." He didn't even look at her. He went straight to his laptop and started working. Sam remained standing, waiting for an opening. "Miguel," she said softly, "your mom said something earlier. It sounded like she has a plan." "Sam," Miguel interrupted, visibly irritated. "Stop making a big deal out of everything she says. That's just how she is. She'll get tired of it. You don't have to prove anything. Just stay in your lane. Don't provoke them. That's how they are. If you stay quiet, you'll be fine." Sam's chest tightened. Instead of standing by her, he seemed to blame her. The man she chose to love was becoming a stranger. Days passed, and with each day, Andrea and Elvira seemed to come up with new ways to make Sam feel like an outsider. One morning at breakfast, Sam overheard talk of a large family dinner being held for a business partner. "It's a formal dinner," Elvira said, arranging the guest list. "I don't want any clutter at the table." Sam looked up. "Am I included, Mom?" Elvira gave her a tight smile. "Well, technically, you're Miguel's wife, but you've got nothing to contribute to the business. This isn't some backyard barbecue. Not every family member needs to be there." "Shame," Andrea piped in. "I bought an extra apron. Thought maybe you'd want to serve water." Andrea laughed at her own joke. Elvira said nothing, but she didn't stop her daughter either. Sam didn't respond. As they dug into breakfast, she chewed slowly, each bite tasting like a piece of her dignity being swallowed. More days passed. One night, Sam overheard Miguel talking to his friends about going to a bar in downtown Nashville. "Can I come with you?" she asked, trying to sound hopeful. Miguel shook his head. "They don't know you. You wouldn't have a ride. Even if you came with me, I don't think you'd enjoy it. It's not a family-friendly night. No spouses are coming. It's all business talk." Sam nodded, trying to understand. But as Miguel walked away, she heard him on the phone. "Make sure she doesn't leave the house while I'm out," he told Andrea. "I don't want a scene. Mom might say something again." On the night of the formal dinner, Sam sat quietly in her room. She wore a simple white dress. She hadn't been invited, but still, she dressed up. She looked at herself in the mirror, forcing a smile. "I won't feed into their anger," she whispered to herself. "Maybe someday they'll get tired." But as she peeked from the window, she saw Miguel get into the car, with a woman in a long black gown. The woman held onto his arm. She was smiling, comfortable. Sam's tears fell. She didn't know who the woman was, but the more painful truth, she wasn't sure who Miguel was anymore. The next day, while cleaning the veranda, Sam heard Elvira calling her from downstairs. "Get ready, dear." Elvira said, her tone cold but firm. "We have a company party next week. I need someone to help with catering. Since you're used to that kind of work, I thought maybe you'd want to assist." Sam looked up. "A company party?" "Don't worry," Elvira said with a bitter smile. "I'll provide you with a uniform." From the veranda, Sam stood frozen. She was still holding the white dress she had planned to wear had she been invited. But now it meant nothing. The smile she saw on the lips of the woman who had been with Miguel cut through her heart like a whip. Before she could cry again, Elvira called out once more. "Don't forget to report to the catering team tomorrow morning. I don't tolerate tardiness from my staff during rehearsals." Her voice held no emotion. Sam was no longer seen as family. She was an employee, a servant. That night, Sam locked herself in the bathroom. She turned the shower on high to muffle her sobs. Only one question echoed in her mind. Why me? Why did he marry her? Of all the women in the world, why choose her? Only to never truly love her? Rehearsal day. Sam woke up early and went straight to the kitchen. She wore the plain uniform Elvira had given her the night before. A white blouse, black skirt, and apron. Even though it hurt her deeply, she chose humility. If this was the only way to avoid more conflict, she would endure it. As she arranged a tray of drinks, Andrea walked by. Her arm hooked in an IV pole, head covered, looking pale. Despite that, her words were still sharp. "Watch my lemon water," she ordered. Then she glanced at the tray. "But don't get too close. I don't want your saliva in it." Sam said nothing. After Andrea left, she noticed that Andrea had forgotten a folder on the table. It was close to the drinks she was preparing. For a moment, Sam hesitated. Her heart pounded. Part of her wanted to look away. She slowly opened the folder. Medical report name, Andrea Valderrama. Condition, chronic myeloid leukemia, CML, urgent. Note, requires stem cell transplant from a C or B+ compatible donor. Sam frowned. A B+? She continued reading. On the bottom of the page, there was a section labeled Donor Match. A list of blood tests and potential matches was stapled behind it. Then she saw it. Donor, Samantha Teresa Cruz. Match level, 98% compatible. AB+, her heart raced. Behind the folder was a memo from a private hospital. It read, "Successful match was discovered during initial blood screening initiated by Mr. Miguel Valderrama. Proceed to pre-transplant procedure once marriage is secured and consent is obtained." Sam's eyes widened. Initial blood screening, marriage is secured. Her world shattered. She remembered the week before their wedding. Miguel had invited her to a free medical mission. He said it was a company project. She had lined up at the lab tent, had her blood drawn, and even laughed when the nurse told her, "You're a B+, super rare." She thought nothing of it. She thought it was just part of Miguel's generosity. But now everything was clear. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. She held the photo she secretly took of the medical report using her old phone. Miguel lay beside her, breathing but lifeless. She stood up quietly and stepped out of the room. In the garden of the Valderrama mansion, she sat on the swing bench. There she let out the tears she'd been holding in. He didn't love her. He married her, not for love, but for her blood. The next day, Sam sat quietly at the dining table. Miguel arrived from work, still in his coat. He looked at her but showed no warmth. "Did you eat?" he asked, as if nothing was wrong. Sam didn't respond. She stared at him and slowly asked, "Why me?" Miguel paused. "What? Why did you marry me?" she asked, eyes steady. Miguel's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" Sam took out her phone. She showed him the photo of the report. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." Miguel went quiet. It took him a moment to respond. "I knew the truth would hurt you," he said at last. "But what did you want me to do?" Let Andrea die? We needed a donor, and you were the only match. That's all? Sam's voice trembled. You used me? I didn't mean to fall for you, Miguel said defensively. But it happened. It wasn't all fake. I didn't have a choice. You were kind, simple, easy to deal with, easy to use. Sam choked back her tears. Her voice was barely audible. You used me. I like you. I do, Miguel said. Sure, I married you for Andrea's sake, but I do like you. Sam didn't reply. She stood and left him sitting at the dining table, his face pale, his hands frozen on the tablecloth, now haunted by the truth he couldn't deny. In the bedroom, Sam quietly packed some of her clothes into a bag. She didn't have a clear plan, but she knew she couldn't stay in that house any longer. Before she could reach the door, Elvira appeared in the doorway. What do you think you're doing, dear? Elvira's voice was icy. You think you can just leave like that? By law, you're still Miguel's wife, and as long as Andrea's alive, we need you. If I were you, I'd drop the drama. Sam looked up. Her eyes were filled with tears. This wasn't the end, but it was the beginning of her fight, not for love, but for her dignity. 7 a.m. The sound of the alarm felt like a daily scream in Sam's ears. So did the clatter of silverware being laid out in the dining room. But this morning, her body felt heavier. She felt empty, low on blood, and for good reason. Her third blood extraction session for Andrea had just ended. She walked slowly down the hallway of the Valderrama mansion, carrying Elvira's coffee tray. Her hands trembled, dizziness creeping into her vision. Still, she forced herself to walk straight. When she reached the matriarch's office, she gently placed the cup on the table. Elvira didn't even look at her. You're 3 minutes late, she said coldly, reapplying lipstick in the mirror. I'm sorry, Sam whispered, turning to leave. Are you sure? The doctor asked, staring at Sam intently. Our schedule is tight. You could get weaker. Every body has limits. Sam nodded. I need to do this. Someone's life is on the line. You don't have to save the world, Sam, the doctor replied gently. Let me ask you, do you want this, or is someone making you do it? Sam didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the blanket over herself and stared at the ceiling. What right did she have to say no when someone's life depended on her? Sam, clean up that mess on the veranda, Andrea snapped while lounging in a rattan chair, IV drip hanging from her arm. The dust looks like it's nesting rats. Sam didn't respond. She knelt quietly and began wiping the floor. No one respected her anymore. To them, she was just a maid. No, less than that. An animal. While she knelt, Miguel walked by in a business suit, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, I'll meet you in 20, he said. Okay, bye. He put his phone away. Their eyes met for a moment. He didn't stop. He didn't speak. He just kept walking. Do you have anything to say, Miguel? Sam asked, her voice trembling. No, he replied coldly. Just clean that up. Mum's expecting a guest later. And he walked away, just like always. At the hospital, Sam was undergoing her 4th blood extraction session. She lay in the treatment room, a needle in her arm. The doctor stood nearby, watching. There was no one else with her, not like Andrea, who always had a nurse, a bodyguard, and a luxury blanket. Mid-procedure, Sam grew faint. Her vision darkened. Her eyes slowly closed. Doc, her BP is dropping, the nurse shouted. The doctor rushed to her side. Get the oxygen, now! When Sam opened her eyes again, it was night. She was alone in the recovery room until the door opened. Elvira entered, dressed in a black coat and glasses, looking fresh from a board meeting. Is your drama over? She asked flatly. Sam didn't respond. Listen carefully, Elvira continued. You have no right to complain. If your being part of this family means Andrea lives, then your responsibility is simple. If you're not willing, go back to whatever gutter you came from. Sam forced a smile. I'll do it, as long as Andrea gets better, she said weakly but clearly. Miss Valderrama, the doctor said as he entered the room, please don't push the patient. She just started recovering. Elvira turned to him coldly. I'm not pushing. She agreed on her own. When the doctor left, Elvira leaned in closer to Sam. You know my son doesn't love you, right? Sam bit her lip, holding back tears. You just happen to have the right blood type, Elvira added. Don't get comfortable thinking you're important. She turned and walked out, leaving Sam there, wounded, exhausted, and alone. In the following days, Sam returned to the mansion. She moved like a ghost, only alive because she had to be. She was ordered to clean bathrooms, tend the garden, cater to Andrea's whims. She had no time for Miguel, but Miguel didn't seem interested in seeing her either. One day, while cleaning Andrea's study, she found a letter from Miguel. Andrea, I'll make sure everything is done before the transplant. She's willing. Just a few more weeks and we can proceed. After that, she's free to go, just like you planned. Sam's heart shattered. Free to go, so once she gave her blood, she'd be discarded. That same night, she confronted Miguel. Miguel, she said, her voice low but firm, is it true that after the transplant, you'll leave me? Miguel said nothing. She added, was this planned, with Andrea? He sighed. Sam, I didn't know how to tell you, but yes, we just wanted to save Andrea. We thought it would be better for you to go afterward. No thank you, she whispered. Not even gratitude. Don't expect a fairy tale, he said. This was never a love story, just a contract, unwritten, but real. The next day, as Sam sat quietly on the edge of the bed, someone knocked on the door. She opened it. A tall man in a white lab coat stood there, clipboard in hand. Good day, he greeted. I'm Dr. Elias Rowan. I've been assigned as Andrea's new consultant and your personal physician for the upcoming sessions. Sam looked at him. For the first time in a long while, someone's eyes held no pity, no judgment, only concern. And in that moment, something stirred in her chest. A hope that had long been buried. Just days before the Valderrama Enterprises' grand anniversary, the company prepared for its most prestigious annual event. It was known among business circles as the Oscars night of the corporate world, where investors, board members, executives, and family members gathered in grandeur. But this year, the event held a secret, a plan, not just to flaunt power, but to humiliate a woman who was never truly accepted as part of the family. Mum, are you sure about this? Andrea asked as she lay on the sofa, still hooked to an oxygen line but firm in her words. I'm very sure, Elvira said as she handed her assistant a sketch of a white maid's uniform. She wants to join, to mingle. Fine, tell her this is the dress code. What did Miguel say? Andrea asked. Elvira smiled. Nothing, as usual, silent. What else can he say? He doesn't even love that woman. He won't protest. While Sam was busy organizing Andrea's medical documents, she was summoned to Elvira's office. She entered quietly, heart pounding. Dear, Elvira began, you remember the event on Friday? Our company's big celebration? Sam nodded. Yes, Mom. I saw the invitation on Miguel's table. It would be good to have you there, Elvira said, smiling coldly. Like you once said, you're not ashamed of where you come from, right? You said that, didn't you? That even if you come from nothing, you stand tall. Sam smiled weakly. Yes, ma'am. If I can be of help? Exactly. Elvira stood, approached her, and handed her a plastic garment cover. Inside, a white maid's uniform, an apron, worn slippers, a name tag, Sam, guest assistant. Sam looked at her. What is this? Your uniform, aren't you excited? You'll help with food coordination, something you're good at. No need to sit with the executives. You might get confused with all the silverware. Sam went quiet. She wanted to say no. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. But just then, Miguel walked in holding a laptop, busy with emails. He didn't even look at her. "Miguel," Sam said almost in a whisper. "You know about this?" Miguel paused, looked at her briefly, expressionless. "It's best if you just go along with it, Sam. Let's get this over with." And he walked out. Again, that night, before the party, Sam sat alone in their room. She sat in front of the mirror, holding the white uniform. She felt lost, weighed down, not by pregnancy, but by everything that had been denied her as a woman, as a wife, as a person. She touched her stomach, empty, but the weight was heavy, the weight of every humiliation. She stared at the mirror. How long will I allow this? But even as the question hung in the air, there was still no answer. The day of the party arrived. Guests arrived in waves at the grand ballroom of Valderrama Enterprises. Red carpet, press coverage, a live orchestra, everyone in designer gowns and tuxedos. The world of wealth and power glimmered all around. At the far end of the venue by the staff entrance stood Sam, dressed in the maid's uniform, head down, hands shaking, fighting back tears. "Ready?" the event coordinator asked. Sam nodded. The doors opened, the music stopped. Every guest turned toward the grand entrance of the ballroom. A woman entered, Sam, head bowed, hands trembling, wearing the white maid's uniform, apron, worn slippers. "Is that Miguel's wife?" a woman whispered, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, is this real?" another murmured. In the middle of the crowd stood Miguel, arms crossed, saying nothing, a forced smile on his lips. Elvira, in a red gown, walked toward Sam with icy confidence. "Well, I'm glad you made it, dear," she said. "Didn't you say you wanted to help? Didn't you say you weren't ashamed of your roots? Then welcome to your new role." Sam couldn't speak. Every stare from every guest felt like a blade. She wanted the ground to swallow her. Suddenly, someone stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. A tall man in a black suit, serious expression, Dr. Elias Rowan. "What are you doing here?" Elvira asked, surprised. He didn't answer, his gaze fixed on Sam. He walked slowly toward her. "Sam," he whispered gently, concern in his voice. Sam's knees weakened. She turned to Elias, tried to smile through the tears. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to be with Miguel, even once at an event." And in an instant, she collapsed. Her knees hit the marble floor. The tray she was holding crashed. Water spilled everywhere. Someone laughed. Someone took a photo. But Elias rushed to her side. He knelt down and draped his coat over her. And for the first time, someone stood for her. In the emergency room, as the nurse treated the bruises on Sam's knees, Elias sat quietly beside her. "It's over," he whispered. "You don't have to keep enduring this." Sam looked at him. Her voice was weak, but something inside her began to stir. "I'm going to prove to them that I'm not garbage." And that's when the strength started to return. The air smelled of flowers, candles, and lies. Inside the grand chapel at St. Valeria Memorial Hall, a woman lay in a white casket, face hidden behind a sheer veil. The room was solemn, every movement quiet, as though she had been deeply loved and respected. "What a shame about Sam," one guest whispered. "She was so sweet," another replied, quiet but always smiling. Near the casket stood Miguel, dressed in black, face filled with sorrow. But in his eyes, there were no real tears, only relief. The burden was gone. The problem was over. In the back, Elvira sat elegantly in a black dress, pearl necklace on her neck, dark sunglasses hiding her eyes. "It happened so fast," Andrea murmured beside her. Such is life, Elvira replied, especially when the body is weak. It's not our fault. She chose to stay. She gave everything. But deep inside, Elvira felt victorious. No more obstacle, no more show, just peace. Or so she thought, because the dead was not dead, and the real nightmare wasn't the funeral. It was the return. A week before the funeral, Dr. Elias Rowan had made a decision. After Sam collapsed at the ballroom, he immediately requested her removal from the Valderrama premises. "Doc, what are you doing?" the nurse had asked. "Madame Elvira said to discharge her after hydration only." "She has no authority over this patient," Elias replied. "Sam is my patient and I am the legal attending physician." Using his own connections, Elias transferred Sam to a private convalescent center in Boulder, Colorado, far from the Valderrama's reach. There her healing began, not just of body, but of self. Sam didn't speak for 3 days, but when she finally opened her eyes and took a full breath, her first question was, "Why did you save me?" Elias was quiet, then he answered, "Because you are not garbage, and for once, someone had to believe in you." Tears rolled down Sam's cheeks, not from pain, but because for the first time, someone had chosen not to hurt her. Back at the memorial, no one knew the casket was empty. Inside it lay a medical dummy, preserved with wax, approved for burial under the pretense of infectious complications. The entire plan was orchestrated by Elias. He forged the death certificate, signed by a retired doctor who owed him a favor, and arranged cremation through a discreet private facility. On paper, Sam no longer existed. To the public, she was dead. To the Valderramas, the threat was gone. In a small cottage on the edge of a pine forest, Sam sat in front of a mirror. She wore a plain hoodie, her hair now short, her gaze sharper than ever. She was no longer the timid, soft-spoken Sam. "Your name, ma'am?" asked the therapist during her intake evaluation. She paused. "Samantha Teresa Cruz," she answered, "but don't call me that." "What would you like us to call you?" She looked out the window. Her wounds were still fresh, but the fire in her eyes was unmistakable. "Just Teresa," the kind of woman who no longer needed permission, whose voice no longer trembled. The therapist nodded. "Are you ready to get back up?" Teresa looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not just getting back up. I'm going back to the Valderrama mansion." 3 days after the funeral, life at the Valderrama mansion returned to its polished routine. A cleansing ritual was held. Elvira ordered that all of Sam's belongings be discarded. Photos were replaced. Miguel was instructed to avoid anything that reminded him of her. But each night, Miguel grew restless. Every time he opened Sam's old closet, her scent lingered. Each time he passed the veranda, it was as if he still heard her footsteps. In every moment of silence, something felt missing, though he wouldn't admit it. What was missing wasn't coming back in the same form. Far away, in a quiet countryside cottage nestled at the foot of a mountain, Teresa awoke to the aroma of hot chocolate and freshly baked bread. She opened the window. The wind was cold and soft, a far cry from the storm of judgment and humiliation she'd left behind in the city. It had been a month since she convinced the world she was dead. A month of silence, of rebuilding strength, and of slowly growing closer to Dr. Elias Rowan, not just as a doctor and patient, but as two people carrying wounds, both seeking new beginnings. That morning, Elias had something to tell her. They sat on the veranda, both holding mugs of coffee as the sun began to rise. Elias hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I've been meaning to tell you this," he began, "but I wanted to make sure you were ready." Teresa frowned. "What is it?" He pulled out a brown envelope from his bag. Inside were documents, photographs, and an old medical file. While helping with your recovery, Elias continued, I found something strange in your birth records. No detailed information about your parents. Just one thing stood out. Years ago, someone went to the hospital looking for a missing child. Teresa opened the envelope. Inside was an old photograph of a 3-year-old girl, smiling, wearing a red ribbon. On the back, handwritten, for Teresa. My daughter, I will find you. The mug slipped from Teresa's hand. She froze. Ramon Bautista, Elias said, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country. 25 years ago, his daughter went missing. Rumors said she was born to a housemaid, someone the family disapproved of. Elias opened the folder again. Inside, DNA test results. Positive match. Teresa Cruz. She didn't speak. Her whole body felt drenched in cold realization. All her life, she thought she was a child of no importance. Raised in poverty, left at an orphanage, surviving in silence. But now she knew. She had a family, one with the power to give her a life she never had. But they left her. Why now? She whispered. Why only now? He searched for you, Teresa, Elias answered. But someone hid you. Your adoptive grandfather. He never gave you the letter. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he just couldn't let you go. Is he still alive? She asked. Yes, Elias said. And he's still looking for you. Teresa's chest shook. She didn't know what hurt more, the years she spent alone, or the what-ifs that could have changed her life. Will you meet him? Elias asked gently. Teresa stayed silent, then shook her head. Not yet. In the days that followed, Teresa couldn't stop thinking about the name Ramon. Memories flooded back. Faint images. A deep voice calling her name. A kiss on the forehead. A hug never felt again. Each one now heavier than before. But with the past unveiled, her present began to take shape. Together with Elias, she joined a local cooperative. He taught her how to log inventory, read financial statements, and understand the value of not just products, but her own abilities. You know, I'm not just helping you because I want you to learn, Elias said, one afternoon as he explained market pricing to Teresa. I want you to feel that you are enough, even without your father's last name, even without the Valderramas. Teresa looked at him. Even without Elias? She said it teasingly, a small smile on her lips. Elias smiled back, but didn't answer right away. Even without me, he finally said, but I hope I'm still here. At a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, Ramon Bautista met with his private investigator. The man handed him a photograph, blurry, taken from a community seminar. The woman in the picture had short hair, looked thinner, but Ramon knew. That's her, he whispered. No matter how much she's changed, I know my daughter. What do you want to do, sir? The man asked. Don't approach her yet, Ramon said. She's not ready, but make sure she's safe. He looked up at the sky, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, my child. I'm too late. Back in Boulder, Teresa touched the old photo of her younger self and smiled. I don't know what's coming next, she told Elias, but I know who I am now. More than just a wife, more than a donor, more than someone who takes pain in silence. Elias nodded. You're enough, you're whole, and you're free. One morning, Elias handed her a brown envelope. What's this? Teresa asked. Business registration forms, Elias replied, if you want to start something of your own. She looked at him, then at the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the Sam who was broken and silent. She was Teresa, capable of building her own world. She picked up the pen and, for the first time in her life, signed with her own name. The business was called Teresa's Essentials, a small operation selling local farm products from the mountains of Colorado, organic herbs, honey, ginger tea, and handmade soaps, a humble beginning, but each product carried a part of her heart, a heart no longer given away for others, but finally for herself. "You can open your own bank account now," Elias said as he helped her with paperwork. "This is my first time," Teresa laughed nervously. "I've had accounts before, but never really mine. My name was there, but they weren't mine." "Now everything is," Elias said. "No more Valderrama, no proxy names, just you." Teresa looked at him. He was wearing a polo shirt, holding a laptop, helping build the business of a woman he never abandoned. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked. "You're not obligated." Elias was quiet, then smiled. "Because I know what it feels like to lose yourself. And you're the reminder that we can get back up." In the weeks that followed, it wasn't easy. Some days Teresa doubted herself. Some days deliveries got mixed up. Some partner farms broke promises. Sometimes she lost money. But she didn't give up. She enrolled in online business courses using Elias's laptop. She learned spreadsheets, accounting reports, marketing plans. Late into the night, she stayed up studying cost of goods and profit margins. "I feel like a student catching up," she once joked to Elias. "But you're catching up faster than anyone," he replied. One evening, beneath the pine trees, Teresa held a notebook filled with plans. "Sometimes I wonder," she said, "what if I had never married Miguel? What if I'd been found earlier, grown up wealthy?" "You might have been different," Elias said. "Stronger?" she asked. "No," Elias said, shaking his head. "Maybe weaker." Teresa looked at him. "Because your strength now came from all you endured, not from money, not from a last name, but from the courage to stand up every time you were knocked down." Teresa smiled. "Then I won't regret the life I lived." 3 months after launching, Teresa's Essentials had become a known supplier to local eco-friendly shops in the area. She had saved enough to start proper packaging and branding. She commissioned a new logo, a flower with open petals. The tagline, "Care for self, strength for others." Online orders picked up. Her social media gained followers. She didn't reveal her full past, but she began sharing her inspiration. A woman who had been through darkness and bloomed again. One evening, as Teresa was organizing inventory, Elias approached with a surprise. "I've got something for you," he said, holding a folder. Teresa opened it. Inside was a partnership agreement from a well-known wellness brand in the city. They wanted Teresa's Essentials as their exclusive organic supplier. "Is this real?" she asked in disbelief. Elias nodded. "That's not all. They want you to be a co-investor, not just a supplier, an actual partner." Teresa sat down. She couldn't believe it. "They want to partner with me." "Not just because of your products," Elias said, "but because they saw your vision, your leadership, and your heart." Tears welled up in Teresa's eyes, not from pain, but from a kind of affirmation she'd never known. "I matter, not because of who I was married to, not because of a connection, but because of who I am." Weeks later, Teresa received an invitation to a wellness expo in New York City, where the joint brand would be launched. She stood before the mirror, wearing a black blazer and an emerald green dress, makeup clean and simple, confidence steady in her gaze. She was no longer the crying woman in the guest bedroom, no longer the maid in the ballroom. She was a woman who had learned to fight, and now she was returning, not as Miguel's wife, but as herself. Inside the limousine taking her to the event, Teresa opened a small box Elias had given her. Inside was a simple silver chain bracelet. At the center, it was engraved, "I was never lost. I was just finding myself." Teresa smiled. "I'm ready." As she stepped out onto the venue's red carpet, all eyes turned to her. Cameras flashed, whispers began. She walked tall, no shame, no fear. The woman they thought was dead was very much alive, and ready to collect. Inside the grand ballroom of Lucent Tower, a private event celebrated the launch of a new wellness product line, a joint venture between Aurora Medica and Teresa's Essentials. Investors, media, and industry personalities filled the room. 2 years later, at a luxury hotel in Manhattan, the event for Aurora Medica, a new private medical tech company, began. It was hailed as one of the most anticipated investment ventures in Southeast Asia, known for futuristic diagnostics and advanced stem cell therapy. As applause filled the room, the host announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the co-founder of Aurora Medica and the visionary behind Teresa's Essentials, Miss Teresa Cruz." The doors opened. From the light, Teresa walked in, wearing a sleek black pantsuit, hair in a clean bun, no lipstick. Her face held not arrogance, but self-recognition. "This is me, alive, free, owing nothing to those who hurt me." She stood in the center of the crowd. She hadn't expected to see them, but there they were, Miguel, Elvira. 2 days before the event, in a boardroom high above the city, Teresa sat in a meeting with Aurora Medica executives. "If you come in as a silent investor," one explained, "you'll have a 20% stake, but with your branding power, we're open to making you a co-founder." Teresa didn't respond immediately. She stared at the documents before her. Months ago, she wasn't even allowed inside her own home. Now she was being offered a founding seat. "I won't be silent," she said. "If I join, you'll hear my voice." The executive smiled. "That's exactly what we're looking for." Meanwhile, back at the Valderrama mansion, Elvira was livid. She stormed through the living room, tablet in hand, fuming. "Miguel, what is this I'm hearing? Teresa's alive?" She slammed the tablet on the table, on the screen, a poster for the launch event. "I thought she was dead. We had a death certificate." Miguel couldn't meet her eyes. "I didn't know, Mom. We all thought it was real." "No guessing," Elvira barked. "If she's alive, then she knows. She knows we used her. She knows about the blood transfusions. And now she's coming back, with her own business." Elvira looked at Andrea in the corner. "Make sure she doesn't destroy our family's reputation." At Teresa's hotel the night before the event, she sat on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. Elias sat beside her, sipping coffee. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. "I don't know if I should be scared or excited," Teresa replied. "After everything, I'm going back to this city, not to beg, but to show that I survived." Elias smiled. "Not just that you survived, but that you're whole." "There's still a part of me that's scared," she whispered. "What if I have to face them again? Miguel, Elvira, what if they try to do it again?" "It's different now," Elias answered. "You're not alone anymore." The day of the launch arrived. Inside the venue, the red carpet, media walls, and reporters buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't the kind of event where one would expect to see a woman who was once forced to wear a maid's uniform just to be humiliated. But as the co-founders and partners were introduced, whispers began. "Is that Teresa Cruz? She looks like Sam Valderrama. No way, Sam's dead, right? But look at her eyes, that posture, it's her." When Teresa took the stage, there was no hesitation in her voice. "Good evening. Thank you for welcoming a woman who was once told she would never amount to anything." She looked directly into the crowd. In one corner sat Miguel, Elvira, and Andrea, present as business representatives of Valderrama Industries. They hadn't been invited. Their PR team had volunteered to attend so they could observe the competition, but they hadn't expected this. "My name is Teresa Cruz," she continued, "and I'm not here to explain who I used to be. I'm here to show who I am now." After her speech, Teresa walked down the hallway toward a private lounge. All eyes followed her. Suddenly, someone stepped in her path. Miguel. "Sam," he said softly. Teresa didn't speak. She just stared at him. "I was shocked. I thought you were gone." "You had a lot of thoughts, Miguel," she said coldly. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's to stop trusting the thoughts of people who don't know how to love." "Can we talk?" he asked. "There are things I need to explain." She smiled, calm and composed. "I don't need an explanation from someone who stood in silence while I was humiliated in front of a crowd." She turned her head. Elvira stood nearby, wineglass in hand, her neck stiff with tension. Teresa ignored her. She walked straight into the lounge, chin held high. No rage, only dignity. That evening, in a closed-door investor meeting, one executive spoke up. "Miss Cruz, we've seen the potential of your product. We're offering to acquire your brand, double its valuation, but with one condition." "What condition?" Teresa asked. "You give up control of the name. It will be exclusive to the Valderrama Wellness Group." Teresa laughed, not sarcastically, not bitterly, but with pure truth. "Do you know why I started this business?" she asked. "Because I didn't want to repeat history." She stood. "I'm sorry, I can't sell it, especially not to the very people who once proved I could be trampled." She looked them all in the eye. "I am not for sale." After the event, Teresa walked quietly back to her hotel through light rain. Elias opened an umbrella and walked beside her. "Let's go home," he said. Teresa smiled. Her shoulders were wet, but her spine stood straight. "Not yet. There's one more thing I have to do." "What's the plan?" "It's time." "For what?" "To return everything they gave me," she said. "But I don't need to scream to be heard." "My revenge," she added, "comes with dignity." In the stillness of an old garden on the estate of Don Ramon, the twilight sun filtered through the leaves. The scent of gumamela and evening jasmine lingered in the air. Sometimes silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the culmination of a long-awaited moment. Teresa stood there in a simple white dress. She quietly faced the elderly man in front of her. Ramon, the man who had searched for her without her knowing. Now that they were face to face, everything that had been missing returned. The hole in her heart, suddenly named. "Is it really you?" Ramon asked, voice trembling with hope, holding an old photo of a baby girl, a girl with gentle eyes and a sharp nose. Teresa nodded, her lips quivering. "Yes, I'm Teresa." Ramon's world stopped. Tears fell from his eyes, tears that had been withheld for too long. He stepped closer, cautiously, as if afraid it was all a dream. "My daughter," he whispered. "My child." Teresa could no longer hold back. She walked forward and embraced him, tightly, from the heart of a daughter starving for a father's love, and from a father who had long regretted the years without his child. "If only you knew how long I've searched for you, Teresa," Ramon said, voice shaking. "I lived for years in sorrow, longing." "What matters," Teresa replied, her voice thick with emotion, "is that we still found each other." Ramon took a deep breath and pulled an envelope from his coat. "All my properties, my businesses, my land, my shares in different companies, I'm transferring them to you. Not because I owe it to you as a father, but because you deserve it." Teresa's eyes widened. "I don't need—" Ramon gently stopped her. "This isn't about money. It's about responsibility. I want to trust you. You will carry our name forward, not just as Teresa, but as a woman with principle." The air around them stilled. Only the wind and birds bore witness to the moment between father and daughter. Ramon took her hand and placed the envelope in it. "I know what's been happening," he said. "I know what you've endured. That's why I believe this will be the key. He paused, to take Valderrama Industries back. You don't have to prove anything anymore, Teresa, he said. But if you want to claim your rightful place in a world that once turned its back on you, I'll be here, with you. Tears fell again, but this time not from pain, from acceptance, from new hope. For the first time, she felt fully embraced, as a daughter, as a woman, as a person. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they looked up together at the sky. Father and daughter, reunited by fate, ready to begin a new chapter, not one of revenge alone, but of legacy, forgiveness, and love. Soon after, a press release was issued by Aurora Medica. Aurora Medica confirms full acquisition of Vitalis Pharmacorp, effective immediately. CEO Teresa Cruz assures continuation of services and expansion of public health programs. Few in the industry noticed the name Vitalis Pharmacorp, except those who knew its significance. At Valderrama Industries, a panicked executive rushed into Elvira's office, tablet in hand. "Ma'am Elvira," he gasped, "Vitalis Pharma has just been acquired, fully bought out by Aurora Medica." Elvira turned sharply, wineglass in hand. "So?" "Ma'am," the executive continued, "Vitalis is our third-party supplier for blood storage and plasma tech in all hospital branches. If we lose that partnership, our entire medical operations will shut down." Andrea had just walked in. She looked alarmed. Elvira remained quiet. Then she picked up the tablet and read the headline. Teresa Cruz, Aurora Medica. She didn't need an explanation. This wasn't coincidence. This was a calculated move. A strike at the very root of their most profitable business. A few weeks earlier, "I want to acquire Vitalis," Teresa had said in a meeting with the Aurora board. Not for profit, but for control of the supply chain that Valderrama relies on. A partner nodded. "It'll be expensive, but if we treat it as a strategic acquisition, it's feasible." "Then start the negotiations quietly," Teresa replied. "I want it completed by the end of the quarter." "For what purpose?" asked the legal advisor. Teresa answered without hesitation. "For people like me," she said, "those who were used, discarded. They don't get to do this to anyone else." Back at Valderrama headquarters, an emergency board meeting was underway. Investor confidence was crumbling. "We're having logistical issues," the CFO reported. "Region 4's orders were cancelled. We've lost blood preservation materials." "Find another supplier," Elvira ordered. "Ma'am," the executive replied, "Teresa owns the exclusive licensing rights to that tech. She's removed us from the partner list." Miguel sat in the corner, silent. No one was listening to him anymore. He was now a ghost in his own company. "We can't let her bring us down," Andrea said, voice trembling. "It's not just her," Elvira muttered. "I was raised to win, and the Valderrama legacy won't end with that woman." But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks after the acquisition, a bigger headline shook the industry. Valderrama Industries under investigation for ethical malpractice involving unauthorized blood donations from spouse-relative source. Whistleblower remains anonymous, but credible. More headlines followed. Wife used as blood donor. Medical ethics breached. Valderrama faces court cases. Exclusive interview. Former staff speaks out. A former nurse appeared on television. They used Mrs. Valderrama as a donor, but the records were always manipulated. Some documents are missing, but there's still data in the system. The whistleblower's identity was hidden, but the evidence was enough. At the Aurora Medica headquarters, Elias approached Teresa with fresh reports. "You didn't leak this?" he asked. "No," Teresa answered, "but I won't stop the truth from coming out, especially if the truth is what will finally close these wounds." Elias shook his head, smiling slightly. You're so quiet, but every move you make screams justice. The sea is quiet when it's deep, Teresa replied. I don't want to destroy, but if something must be broken, I'll break it the right way. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, Teresa sat quietly in her office with Ramon. They looked at each other. No dramatics, no fanfare. I'm sorry I was late, Ramon said, but I'm proud of you. Teresa's eyes softened. I spent years asking why no one ever chose me, she said. Now I know. I had to choose myself. Ramon pulled her in for a hug, not as a savior, but as a parent, ready to catch up. If you'll allow it, he said, I'd like to support you, but if you don't want that, I'll accept it too. Just know this, you're no longer alone. Teresa smiled, tears in her eyes, but her heart light. Meanwhile, at the Valderrama mansion, an eviction notice arrived. They could no longer pay mounting debts. Joint accounts were frozen, business partners had withdrawn, their hold on the market gone. Why is this happening? Andrea screamed. Miguel remained quiet, but for the first time, he spoke. She's not doing this to hurt us, he said. She's doing this to make things right. You always side with her, Elvira snapped. This is your fault. You married her. You manipulated her. Don't blame me, Mom, Miguel said quietly. She's the only one who loved me when I had nothing. And what did we do to her? He walked away, leaving mother and sister behind in a crumbling empire. That night, in the rain, Teresa stood across the street from the old Valderrama house. The lights were off, no guards, no noise. A once imposing place of power, now hollow. Elias stood beside her. How does it feel? He asked. A little heavy, she said, but peaceful. You don't have to look back anymore, Elias said. You owe them nothing. She nodded. You're right. Justice, Teresa thought, doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's the silence that speaks louder. In her office later that night, Teresa received a media request. We would like you to speak publicly, Miss Cruz, about what happened, about why you disappeared. The world is listening now. She smiled. If I speak, then everything must be told. At the TV studio the next day, Teresa sat in the makeup chair, preparing for the taping of her primetime interview. It would air on Behind the Scenes, an investigative program known for exposing controversial truths. Elias waited silently in the guest lounge. He knew this was the moment that could bring back Teresa's deepest pain, but also the moment that would finally set her free. Before the interview began, a well-known journalist entered Teresa's office. He wasn't just any reporter, he was once Miguel's classmate, now a senior field researcher for the show. Miss Cruz, he said, we know parts of your story. But I believe the country deserves the whole truth. Teresa looked at him. If I speak, people will be hurt. Secrets will never be taken back. Maybe, he replied, but I'm sure of one thing. You're the voice we need to hear. Inside the studio, the cameras were set. Teresa wore a plain white blouse, beige slacks, no jewelry, no red lipstick. She presented herself not as a glamorous entrepreneur, but as a woman who had lived through destruction and survived. Are you ready? The host asked. Teresa nodded. This wasn't for drama, this was for truth. Who are you really, Teresa Cruz? She paused, took a deep breath. I'm a woman who loved her husband, even though he didn't love me back. I'm a woman who was used for her blood, but was never treated as equal. I'm a woman who endured humiliation and still chose to love. The lights in the studio dimmed slightly, and the camera light blinked red. Live recording had begun. Teresa looked directly into the lens, calm, composed, but inside her chest, a storm churned. The host leaned in slightly. What happened to you after your marriage? Teresa didn't hesitate. I was used. My marriage was part of a plan I didn't know about. I became a donor of blood, of strength, of dignity. I lived in a house where I was never seen as a person. She paused, but I stayed, because I loved, I gave, and because I believed I was chosen for something more. The audience in the studio remained still. The energy shifted. This wasn't a confession. It was a reckoning. "Why didn't you speak up earlier?" the host asked gently. "Because I was ashamed," Teresa answered. "Because when you've been made to feel worthless, it takes time to realize your value." "And now? Now I know who I am." The camera zoomed slightly closer. The host asked the next question carefully. "Is it true? You faked your death?" "Yes," gasps echoed in the control room. "I did it to survive, and because I needed to become someone no one could break again." Back at the Valderrama mansion, what remained of it, Elvira sat frozen, watching the television. Miguel stood behind her. Andrea was in the corner, her lips trembling. They watched the woman they'd buried, alive, unapologetic, and unstoppable. The host leaned forward. "What would you say to the people who hurt you?" Teresa looked straight into the lens. "I forgive you. But I will never return. I will never be yours again, not as a wife, not as a daughter-in-law, not as a pawn. I am Teresa Cruz, and I belong to no one." In homes across the country, viewers wept, some out of guilt, some out of pride, some because they saw themselves in her story, and some because they knew they had underestimated her. That night, after the interview aired, social media exploded. Teresa Cruz, voice of strength, Doc's justice for Teresa. Thousands of women sent messages. "I left because of you. I finally stood up to him. You reminded me I am not weak." And in the quiet of her hotel room, Teresa read them. One by one, Elias entered, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "You changed lives tonight," he said. "I didn't mean to," she replied, "but sometimes survival becomes a message." A week later, Teresa was invited to speak at a women's summit in Washington, D.C. She stepped onto the stage with no cue cards, no speech, only memory, only truth. "There are women everywhere living in silence," she said, "married but unloved, present but invisible, giving everything, and still not enough. I am one of them, but I rose." Across the country, an elderly housemaid named Martha watched from a nursing home. She wiped her eyes with a tissue and whispered, "That girl, she spoke for all of us." And at a modest graveyard in a quiet town, Teresa returned once more. She placed flowers on the stone of the grandfather who raised her. "I know you were afraid, but I understand now," she said softly. "Even fear can come from love." She kissed the headstone, stood up and walked away. The sun warmed her shoulders. The wind no longer felt harsh. Teresa Cruz had come full circle, not broken, not bitter, but free. 1 month later, at the newly built community center funded by Aurora Medica, children laughed as they ran through the garden paths. A wall near the lobby bore a plaque, in honor of every woman who stood up, even when her knees shook. Teresa Cruz. Inside the center, Teresa stood before a group of young women. Some had survived abuse. Some were rebuilding their lives. All of them were listening. She spoke not as a CEO, but as someone who had once begged for love and now had found peace within herself. "I thought I needed to be chosen," she said, "but I realized I only needed to choose me." At the back of the room, Elias watched. He had never confessed his feelings in grand declarations. He had simply stayed, listened, protected, walked beside her. After the talk ended, Teresa approached him. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" Elias asked. She smiled. "To start again. Not to forget, not to erase, but to begin, on my own terms." He handed her a folder, Inside, adoption papers for a little girl named Hope. She was abandoned at a clinic last year, Elias said. She reminds me of you. Teresa's hands trembled slightly as she held the papers. I've been given so much. Maybe it's time I pass it on. That afternoon, Teresa visited her father, Ramon, at his home. I'm proud of you, he said, as she helped him into his wheelchair. Thank you for finding me, she replied, even if it was late. Love never expires, he said. It just waits. They looked out over the orchard, where workers were planting trees, part of a new livelihood program Teresa had started for women and farmers. Later that night, Teresa returned home to her quiet mountain cottage. She stepped onto the veranda, coffee in hand. A little girl played nearby, giggling. Elias sat beside her, sketching a plan for their next outreach project. Peace had finally arrived. But more than that, purpose. She opened her notebook and wrote, I was not saved by anyone else. I saved myself. And that is the story I will pass on. Far away, in the now empty Valderrama mansion, the rooms echoed with silence. No footsteps, no servants, no power. Just history, faded, and a legacy. Rewritten by the woman they thought would remain voiceless, in a new world of her own making, with no applause, no stage, no spotlight. Teresa Cruz smiled and began again.